In the quiet hush of a moonlit night, the flames danced like wild spirits, devouring everything in their path, casting an ominous glow over the small, humble village. Smoke billowed into the sky, a dark cloud of despair that threatened to swallow the stars themselves. Amidst the chaos, a figure emerged, clad in simplicity, eyes wide with fear and resolve, running towards the inferno with nothing but desperation and hope clinging to her heart. It was then, in that moment of trembling courage, that the world seemed to pause, holding its breath for what was to come. The fire roared louder, a beast hungry for destruction, yet she pressed on, driven by a love so pure it defied the flames. Her fragile silhouette flickered against the blazing backdrop, a symbol of vulnerability and unwavering will. As she reached the edge of the inferno, the air thick with heat and despair, she was pulled from the brink of despair by a figure whose silhouette was stark against the fiery chaos. A man, wealthy beyond measure yet unassuming in his grace, reached out, a guardian cloaked in shadows and gold, risking everything to save a life that was not his own. The flames flickered around them, casting a golden halo on her trembling face, her eyes shimmering with a mixture of relief and unspoken fear. In that fleeting moment, amid the crackling chaos, the distance between riches and humility blurred into insignificance. Here, in the heart of destruction, a silent promise was forged, an unspoken vow that transcended wealth, status, and the world's judgments. But as the fire finally subsided, and the night grew silent once more, the man's question echoed through the darkness, a question that would break the hearts of many and shape the destiny of those involved forever. It was not about possessions or gratitude, but something far deeper, far more heartbreaking in its simplicity. And as the embers cooled and the dawn threatened to break, that question lingered like a shadow, an echo of longing, sacrifice, and the unyielding power of love in its purest form. Tonight, amid ash and tears, a story was born, not just of rescue, but of a question that would haunt the hearts of all who heard it, reminding us that sometimes, the greatest acts of kindness come with a cost we're never ready to pay. In the quiet corners of his grand, lonely estate, Marcus sat by the window, staring into the darkness that seemed to swallow the flickering lights of the village below. The fire had come and gone, but the ache within him lingered, an emptiness carved deep into his soul. Once, he had known the warmth of love, of belonging, but time had eroded those memories, leaving behind only shadows and silence. Every morning, he awoke to an insipid ache that no wealth could soothe, a ghost of a life he once imagined, now just distant echoes. His face, lined with the weight of unspoken grief, betrayed the vulnerability he often tried to hide behind a veneer of indifference. He was a man marked by loss, not just of loved ones, though many had left or passed away, but of hope. The loneliness was a physical thing, pressing down on his chest, making him feel like an island surrounded by a vast, unbridgeable sea. His days passed in quiet solitude, his only companions the books on his shelves and the memories that haunted him in moments of silence. He carried the scars of a broken heart, the pain of rejection, and the quiet despair of feeling unworthy of love or kindness. Sometimes he wondered if his wealth had become a barrier, an armor that kept others at bay, or perhaps, a prison that kept him from truly connecting. His eyes often flickered with a longing for something unseen, a flicker of hope that refused to die, even amidst the shadows of his grief. He was a man who had built walls around himself, not out of arrogance, but out of a fear of being hurt again. And yet, beneath that fortress of solitude, a fragile humanity persisted. A small part of him still remembered what it was like to feel warmth, whether from a gentle touch or a kind word, though it now seemed like a distant dream. His days were painted with quiet regret, and his nights were filled with restless thoughts, haunted by what could have been and what would never be. Then, one night, amid the flickering glow of the fire that had threatened to consume a life, he found himself standing at a crossroads of vulnerability. An unspoken ache grew within him, a desire to do more than just watch from the sidelines of his own life. It was a quiet, trembling impulse, an instinct to reach beyond his pain and offer something real. As the dawn approached, casting pale light over the world, he knew that this moment, the chance to help, to save, to perhaps feel something again, was a fragile thread. And he wondered if, somewhere deep inside, the woman who had faced the flames that night was also fighting her own battles of loss and longing. Because, in truth, no matter how much wealth or power we hold, we are all vulnerable, marked by wounds we hide well, waiting for someone brave enough to see beyond the scars. And in that vulnerability, perhaps, lies the seed of something truly transformative, waiting patiently in the shadows of our broken hearts. On a day when the sky was painted with soft hues of dawn, a figure moved quietly through the village streets, her steps hesitant yet purposeful. Her name was Eliza, a young woman with tired eyes and hands that bore the marks of hard labor. She was no stranger to hardship or loneliness. Her life was a quiet testament to resilience, stitched together by moments of quiet despair and fleeting hope. She carried herself with a humility born of necessity, never seeking recognition, simply doing what was needed to survive. Today, she was walking past the grand estate that sat apart from the humble homes, her gaze occasionally drifting upward toward the windows where shadows lingered. It was a small act, glancing up, as if to catch a glimpse of something beyond her reach, that marked her presence. She was never one to seek attention, yet her presence awakened a faint curiosity in the man who watched her from his solitary window. Marcus had seen many faces in his lifetime, some eager for wealth, others broken by loss, but her face was different. It was weathered by the weight of unspoken stories, yet resilient in its quiet dignity. She was neither bold nor boastful, but there was an authenticity in the way she moved, an unspoken strength that seemed to ripple beneath her humble exterior. One day, as she paused to wipe sweat from her brow, their eyes met, brief and unnoticed by the world, yet profoundly felt by both. In that fleeting moment, no words were exchanged, only a silent understanding, an acknowledgement of shared human fragility. She was flawed like everyone else. Her clothes were patched, her hands roughened by labor, and her smile, when it appeared, was tender but tinged with sorrow. She carried the weight of unspoken grief, perhaps the loss of loved ones or dreams deferred by circumstance. But she also carried a quiet hope, a flicker of something better, a belief that kindness, no matter how small, could hold the power to shift the course of a life. It was these simple acts, her gentle, unassuming presence, that subtly stirred something in Marcus, a reminder of the humility he had long buried beneath layers of wealth and solitude. She was never a hero in the traditional sense, but her genuine kindness was like a soft breeze that stirred the stagnant air of his lonely heart. As she continued her walk, she paused by the gate of his estate, not out of curiosity or expectation, but because she felt drawn to the quiet loneliness that lingered behind those towering walls. Without a word, she simply nodded, an unspoken gesture of acknowledgement, before turning away, leaving behind a faint trace of warmth in the cool morning air. That small act, so unobtrusive yet so human, lodged itself deep within Marcus's consciousness. It was enough to remind him that sometimes, change begins with the smallest gestures, an act of kindness that doesn't demand recognition, only the willingness to see someone in their raw, imperfect truth. And as the days stretched before him, he wondered if that quiet presence was the beginning of something more, a gentle nudge toward connection, or perhaps, a reminder that even in the shadows of our wounds, light can softly find a way in. In the days that followed that quiet morning, Marcus found himself watching from the shadows of his grand estate, hesitant yet drawn to the subtle rhythm of life just beyond his gates. It was a cautious curiosity, like a fragile seed taking root in the soil of his guarded heart. Each small gesture from Eliza, an offering of bread from her modest basket, a shared glance during her brief walks past his property, began to unravel the walls he had so carefully built around himself. It was not grand or dramatic, it was simply her presence, steady and unassuming, that gradually chipped away at his loneliness. One afternoon, as the sun dipped lower, casting long golden rays across the village, Eliza was caught in a sudden drizzle. Without a word, Marcus stepped outside, holding an umbrella that seemed too small for the space between them. He offered it quietly, watching her hesitate for a moment before accepting it with a small, grateful nod. The rain dripped down their shoulders, but neither felt the cold, only the gentle warmth of shared silence, a simple act that spoke more than words ever could. In that brief moment, the distance between them felt less like an unbridgeable chasm and more like a fragile thread, delicate yet resilient. In the quiet evenings, Marcus would sometimes leave a small basket of food on her doorstep, a gesture born of longing, not expectation. She accepted these gifts with humility, a faint flicker of a smile warming her tired eyes. One night, noticing her struggling with a heavy bundle, he offered to carry it for her. Her hands trembled slightly as she handed it over, and he felt the weight of her unspoken hardships. They walked together in silence through the narrow alleyways, the soft crunch of gravel beneath their feet the only sound. Each step was an unspoken promise, an acknowledgement that she was seen, that she mattered in ways words could never fully express. On a particularly cold morning, he saw her shivering on the edge of her humble home. Without hesitation, Marcus returned with an old, worn coat, something he no longer wore, but which now felt like an extension of himself. He gently draped it over her shoulders, and for the first time, her guarded eyes softened. It was a simple act, yet it broke through her layers of resilience, revealing a flicker of vulnerability that had long been hidden. In that shared warmth, a fragile trust began to bloom, an understanding that kindness was not about grand gestures but about showing up, day after day, in the small ways that mattered most. Eliza's days grew intertwined with his, quiet exchanges in the early morning light, moments of shared solitude amid the chaos of their lives. Sometimes she would sit on the steps of his estate, sharing a cup of tea he'd poured, her hands trembling but her eyes steady. He listened as she spoke of her dreams, her fears, her losses, her voice a whisper in the wind, fragile yet resilient. And in those moments, Marcus realized that her presence was slowly dismantling the loneliness that had haunted him for years, piece by piece. Yet beneath all these gentle acts, an undercurrent of rising conflict simmered, threats looming over her humble home, whispers of eviction, and the unspoken expectations of a society quick to judge. Their bond, fragile yet real, was beginning to draw attention, and with it, the shadows of judgment and obligation. The more he cared, the more he feared losing her, not to distance but to the harsh realities closing in. Still, he clung to the hope that these small acts, these quiet gestures of kindness, could forge a path through the darkness, a reminder that even the smallest acts can illuminate the way forward, if only we have the courage to keep walking it. The whispers started quietly at first, like the faint rustling of leaves in a distant forest, barely audible against the hum of daily life. But as days turned into weeks, they grew louder, more insistent. Rumors snaked through the village, carried on the wind by gossiping neighbors and curious onlookers. The quiet kindness Marcus had extended to Eliza began to unravel under the weight of judgment. Families of higher standing in the community whispered disapproval, their eyes narrowing at the humble girl who dared to accept kindness from someone so wealthy. Her simple presence in his life, once a gentle breath of fresh air, now seemed to stir a storm of condemnation. The local gossip spread like wildfire, fueled by the stern words of her own family, an unforgiving barrier that refused to see her as anything but a mistake, a stain on their reputation. They called her the girl from the wrong side of the tracks, and painted her as a threat to the fragile social order they guarded zealously. Rumors insinuated that Marcus was merely indulging in charity, that his interest in her was superficial, a fleeting distraction that he would soon discard. The community's whispers turned into pointed stares, and soon, her presence was met with cold glances and hushed criticisms whenever she dared to step outside her door. The pressure mounted, like an invisible wall closing in, suffocating the fragile trust that had begun to blossom between her and Marcus. It was not only gossip. Her family's rejection cut deeper. Her parents, bound by tradition and shame, forbade her from speaking to Marcus, warning her that her humility was a shameful stain on their honor. They insisted she forget the kindness she'd found in him, urging her to return to the life they believed she deserved, one of silence, submission, and the harsh acceptance of her station. Her heart ached with the weight of their rejection, but her loyalty to Marcus, born from quiet moments of shared vulnerability, refused to waver. Yet, despite her resolve, the external world grew louder. Marcus, too, felt the sting of the relentless scrutiny. Each glance, each whisper, was a wound he couldn't ignore. The wealth that once shielded him now felt like a barrier that kept her from running away, from finding safety in the shadows of her own shame. His heart clenched in despair, knowing that their fragile bond was teetering on the brink of destruction, threatened by the very society that had once admired him from afar. Every act of kindness now seemed perilous, as if the universe itself was conspiring to tear them apart. Shadows of doubt crept into his thoughts. Was it worth risking everything for someone so beneath his world? Could love survive the relentless judgments of a society that thrived on superficial appearances? As the days grew darker, the external obstacle loomed larger, casting a pall over their quiet moments. Yet amidst the storm, Eliza's unwavering gaze remained steady, her silent strength a testament to her loyalty. She clung to the hope that, perhaps, love was stronger than societal expectations, that kindness could still carve a path through the thickest darkness. But the question hung heavy in the air: how much more could they endure before the weight of the outside world shattered what little remained of their fragile bond? The wind whispered promises of change, but also of heartbreak, as they stood on the edge of a precipice, their future uncertain, their hearts trembling with the silent fear that love, no matter how pure, might not be enough to withstand the storm. Eliza found solace in Marcus's quiet presence, even when the world around them seemed to crumble into chaos. She often saw him standing at the edge of the village, watching as whispers swirled through the air like dark clouds threatening rain. He didn't speak much during those moments, a silent guard against the storm of judgment that raged around her. His gaze was steady, calm, unwavering, and in that stillness, she felt the weight of his loyalty more deeply than words could convey. When the gossip reached its peak, Marcus continued to walk beside her, his steps slow and deliberate, a quiet anchor amid the turbulence. He listened without judgment, offering only his silence as a shield and a comfort. Sometimes he'd gently touch her hand, a subtle reassurance that he was there, that he wouldn't turn away even as the community's eyes burned with suspicion. It was in these small, human acts that she recognized his strength, not in grand gestures or miraculous deeds, but in his steadfast presence. She saw how he braved the whispers, how he endured the cold glances, simply because he believed in her, believed that her worth was beyond the shallow judgments cast by others. His loyalty was not born out of obligation but from a quiet understanding of what love truly meant, standing firm, unshaken by external storms, even when the ground beneath feels unsteady. Each day, he kept close, walking through the village, listening to the rumors, yet never turning away. When she felt overwhelmed, he remained beside her, offering a steady gaze that was both a promise and a quiet reminder that she was not alone. These moments, simple yet profound, began to chip away at her fears, showing her that even amidst hostility, genuine support could be found in the most human of ways. Marcus's presence was a gentle tide that slowly eroded the walls of doubt she had built around herself. Her heart, once heavy with shame, started to find fleeting glimpses of hope in his unwavering loyalty. He didn't promise to change the world or erase the judgments. They were too persistent, too ingrained. But he offered her something far more precious, a steady hand to hold, a silent vow that she need not face the storm alone. Sometimes, he would lean in close and share a quiet story, a detail from his own past, something small, insignificant to others but vital to her understanding that everyone carried scars, invisible wounds that no amount of wealth or reputation could heal. In those moments, Eliza felt her inner strength blossom slowly, like a fragile seed breaking through the soil's surface, nourished by his quiet support. She began to see herself differently, not just as the humble bride hiding from the world, but as someone who could withstand the weight of judgment, someone deserving of kindness and loyalty. Her transformation was subtle, like the gentle shift of the dawn light painting the sky in soft hues, gradual but inevitable. Marcus, in his own quiet way, was helping her see that resilience isn't forged in grand gestures but in the persistent, unwavering presence of those who believe in us, even when the world refuses to do so. As the days stretched on, her heart grew stronger, rooted in the quiet strength she found in him. The storm still raged around them, but she learned that sometimes, the most powerful act of love is simply standing firm, listening, walking beside, and offering a hand that remains steady, no matter the darkness. And in that steadfastness, she discovered an unspoken promise, that even in the face of relentless doubt, love could be a quiet, enduring light, glimmering softly, patiently, until dawn broke through the night. Eliza's days began to shift imperceptibly. The heaviness that once weighed her down, the shadow cast by shame and doubt, started to lift in small, almost unnoticed moments. She found herself waking up with a faint spark of hope, a gentle reminder that her worth was not defined by others' judgments, or her humble beginnings. Instead, it was rooted deep within her, a quiet ember waiting to be nurtured. She started to look around her little world with different eyes, noticing the beauty in the simple things, how the sunlight spilled through the window, casting golden patterns on the worn wooden floors, how the wind carried the scent of blooming wildflowers, whispering promises of renewal. Slowly, she began to dream again, not just of escaping her circumstances, but of creating something meaningful from them. Her hands, once trembling with uncertainty, found purpose in small acts, tending to her garden, mending old garments, weaving stories from her memories and hopes. She learned to see herself as more than a victim of circumstance. She was a vessel of resilience, carrying within her a quiet strength that no one could take away. Her smile, tentative at first, grew more confident, like the first rays of dawn piercing through the night's darkness, gentle yet persistent. With each passing day, she started sharing her small creations, hand-woven cloths, embroidered patterns, stories told in soft, caring voices, believing, perhaps, that her worth was something she could give freely, not something she had to earn. Her voice grew steadier, her heart more open, and her presence more luminous. She began to teach others in her village, sharing her skills and encouraging them to see the beauty in their own humble lives. Her words, slow and deliberate, carried a quiet conviction that everyone, no matter their start in life, held within them the power to shape their destiny. She realized that her journey wasn't about escaping her past but about embracing herself fully, acknowledging her scars, yes, but refusing to let them define her. She discovered that her purpose was not found in the grand rescue of a single night, but in the small, steady acts of kindness and creation that built her anew each day. Her transformation was like a river slowly carving a canyon, unseen in its subtlety but profound in its depth. From the ashes of despair, she sprouted roots of hope, reaching outward to touch the lives of others with a quiet, unwavering strength. And with that strength, she inspired those around her to believe in their own worth, beyond wealth, beyond reputation, beyond societal expectations. Her smile, once fragile, now radiated a gentle confidence, a testament to her inner growth. She was no longer merely the humble bride saved from the flames. She was a woman who had rediscovered her purpose, her voice, and her capacity to inspire. As her heart healed, so too did her dreams expand beyond her small world. She saw a future where kindness and resilience could flourish, where every act of love, however small, could ripple outward, touching lives in ways she had never imagined. And so, in her quiet, steadfast way, she became a beacon, not just of hope for herself but for all who had forgotten their own worth. Her story was no longer one of mere survival but of blossoming, like a delicate flower emerging from the ashes, reaching toward the sun with unwavering grace. The sky stretched vast and open above her, whispering promises of new beginnings. And in her soul, she knew that her true strength wasn't in the rescue, but in the resilience she had cultivated, an enduring light that would continue to glow, guiding her toward a future she was finally beginning to see with hope and purpose. The village square was alive with the gentle hum of anticipation, a quiet buzz that carried the weight of unspoken stories and newfound hope. Today was different. Today, Eliza stood before her community, not as the girl who had once hidden in shadows, but as a woman who had learned to stand tall despite the whispers and the judgments. The small stage had been set under the ancient oak tree, its branches whispering softly in the breeze as if eager to witness this moment of truth. Villagers gathered, some curious, others skeptical, but all eager to see what this day would bring. Eliza's hands trembled slightly as she stepped forward, her heart pounding in her chest like a drumbeat of resolve. She looked out over the faces, some lined with suspicion, others softened by the faint glimmer of understanding. Her eyes lingered on her family, the ones who had once turned away, their faces unreadable now. She took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her journey settle into her bones. Then, in a voice clear and steady, she addressed them all. She spoke not with bravado, but with honesty, about the fears she had carried, the shame she had tried to hide, and the hope she had nurtured in her quiet moments of solitude. She told of her scars, both visible and invisible, and how each one had shaped her into someone stronger than she had ever believed possible. Her words wove through the crowd like a gentle tide, sometimes trembling, sometimes unwavering, revealing her vulnerability with courage. She spoke of her dreams, her purpose, and the realization that her worth was not dictated by others' perceptions but rooted within her own heart. Her voice carried a quiet power that resonated deeply, stirring something in the villagers who had once judged her from afar. When she finished, silence fell, an almost sacred pause, before the applause began, hesitant at first, then swelling into genuine warmth and respect. Her eyes shimmered with tears, not of despair but of liberation. For a moment she allowed herself to be vulnerable, to acknowledge the community's gaze and her own fears. Yet she stood firm, offering her story as a testament not just to her own transformation but to the possibility of change for all. As she looked around, her gaze settled on Marcus, who had quietly watched her from the sidelines, his expression a mixture of pride and quiet support. Her heart swelled with gratitude, knowing that this moment was more than just acceptance, it was a shared rebirth. The villagers, moved by her courage, began to see her anew, not as the humble bride they once dismissed, but as a symbol of resilience and hope. The old walls of judgment crumbled in the face of her honesty, replaced by a collective understanding that true worth was never dictated by wealth or status, but by the strength to face one's fears and to stand unshaken. The sun dipped lower, casting a golden glow over the gathering, illuminating her face with a gentle light. In that moment, Eliza felt the weight of her past lift, replaced by a quiet sense of belonging, a gift she had fought so hard to claim. The community had witnessed her transformation, and in doing so, they had begun to heal their own prejudices. Her voice, once trembling with doubt, now echoed with the power of 1,000 unspoken promises, to herself, to those who doubted her, and to the future they could build together. The sky stretched vast and infinite, a canvas for new beginnings, as Eliza stepped down from the stage, her heart finally unburdened. And beneath the wide expanse of the evening sky, she knew that love, true, resilient, and rooted deep within, had found its place not just in her story, but in the collective heart of the village. Her journey was no longer one of silent suffering but a testament to the courage it takes to be seen, to be heard, and to believe in oneself. The world whispered back softly, inviting her to walk forward, ready to embrace the dawn of her new life. The air was thick with a quiet heaviness as the family gathered in the dimly lit sitting room, shadows dancing across the worn walls. Eliza's parents sat stiffly, their eyes fixed on the floor, their hands trembling slightly, caught between pride and shame. The silence stretched uncomfortably, each second heavy with unspoken words and buried regret. It was her mother who finally broke the silence, her voice trembling like a fragile leaf in the wind. She looked up slowly, her eyes glistening with unshed tears, and met Eliza's gaze, then turned to her husband. "We were wrong," she whispered, voice cracking with a mixture of sorrow and relief. "We judged you without truly seeing your heart, without understanding your strength. We let fear and pride blind us to the love you carry, love that is pure and true." Her words, tentative yet sincere, filled the room like a gentle rain washing away years of bitterness. Eliza's father drew a shaky breath, his jaw clenched as he looked into her eyes, now softened and shining with resilience. "We've been blind," he admitted, voice thick with emotion. "We let our pride stand in the way of recognizing who you really are, someone deserving of respect, of love. We failed you, Eliza. And for that, we are truly sorry." Tears spilled from his eyes, unrestrained and genuine, as he reached out to grasp her hand. The moment felt sacred, like a fragile blossom blooming in the quiet of a long winter's end. Eliza's heart fluttered painfully, a mixture of pain and hope swirling within her. For years she had carried the ache of rejection, the silent toll of feeling unworthy. Now, as her parents finally voiced their remorse, a slow warmth began to seep into her chest, an ember of forgiveness flickering to life. She felt the truth in their words, the depth of their regret, and in that, a tiny seed of redemption took root. Carefully, she reached out and clasped her mother's trembling hand, then her father's. The gesture was slow, deliberate, rooted in a silent promise that healing could begin, genuine, unhurried, and rooted in the honesty of this moment. The room seemed to breathe with a collective exhale, the past finally laid to rest in the quiet acknowledgement of mistakes made and lessons learned. Standing quietly nearby, Marcus watched this exchange unfold, his own chest tight with emotion. His presence, humble yet steadfast, had been the catalyst that brought this truth into the light, but it was the courage of the family, her own blood, that truly unlocked the door to reconciliation. In the glow of the flickering candlelight, Eliza saw her parents' faces soften as tears traced gentle paths down their cheeks. They had been broken by their own fears and prejudices, yet now, in this fragile moment, they were choosing to heal. Forgiveness was not a sudden miracle, but a slow, deliberate act, earned through honesty, humility, and the willingness to admit fault. The room was filled with a quiet grace, a testament to the resilience of love and the power of truth. As the family sat together in this newfound understanding, the shadows receded, replaced by the tender glow of hope. Outside, the stars began to twinkle, whispering secrets of eternity and renewal. Eliza's heart swelled with a quiet, profound gratitude, knowing that her journey of love and acceptance was now intertwined with her family's path to redemption. She closed her eyes briefly, feeling the warmth of forgiveness seep into her spirit, like the dawn breaking after a long, dark night. This was the moment when wounds healed, not with grand gestures or fleeting promises, but with slow, honest steps taken in the quiet spaces of the soul. And in that gentle stillness, the promise of a new beginning shimmered like the first light of dawn, soft, gentle, and full of endless possibilities. As the first light of dawn stretched softly across the horizon, the village awoke in a gentle hush, as if the world itself was holding its breath in reverent anticipation. The sky was painted in hues of rose and gold, a delicate reminder that even after the darkest night, beauty can bloom anew. Eliza stood beneath the ancient oak, now bathed in the warm glow of morning, her eyes gazing upward at the awakening sky. The stars shimmered faintly above, distant yet constant witnesses to a story of pain, courage, and undeniable hope. In that quiet moment, she felt the silent pulse of the universe whispering that love is never a miracle, it's a quiet act of perseverance, a gentle reminder that no one is truly alone when they carry their truth with open hearts. The wind stirred softly, carrying with it the scent of blooming flowers and the faint melody of birdsong, as if nature itself was singing a lullaby of renewal. It was here, in this serenity, that Eliza realized her journey had never been about escaping darkness but about finding light within herself and in the bonds she nurtured, those fragile, honest connections that bloomed slowly, like the first flowers of spring after a long winter. Love, she understood, was not about magic or grand gestures but about the steady, unwavering presence, like the stars that continue to shine in the night sky, even when unseen during the day. It was in the small acts of kindness, the shared silences, the honest tears, and the courage to stand unshaken amid storms. As the sun rose higher, casting a golden glow over the village, the scene felt like a living painting, a testament to resilience, to growth, and to the quiet strength of human hearts that refused to be broken forever. The village, once shadowed by judgment and fear, now shimmered with a renewed sense of hope, as if the very earth beneath their feet was whispering a promise of new beginnings. Eliza's gaze drifted to the horizon, where the sky met the land in a seamless embrace, a reminder that every ending is but a new beginning, a cycle of loss and renewal, of darkness and dawn. The universe's silent symphony played on, a gentle song of love's enduring truth, that no matter how fierce the storm, love's light persists, guiding us through the shadows and into the warmth of tomorrow. And so, in the stillness of that morning, wrapped in the quiet poetry of nature's awakening, we are reminded that love's greatest power lies in its subtlety. It is not a grand miracle but a constant presence, like the stars shining in the night, or the sunrise that promises hope in the darkness. Love is the proof that no one ever has to walk alone, because even in the quietest moments, we are held by the universe's gentle embrace. If this story has touched your heart, remember that kindness and courage are the true lights in our lives. Share this message, like it, subscribe, and pass it along, because love's quiet strength is a gift meant to be shared. Let us carry the hope of this story into our own days, shining softly like the dawn, reminding ourselves that even the smallest act of love can illuminate the darkest night. And in doing so, we become part of a never-ending dance, one where every soul is connected, every heart capable of kindness, and every dawn a new chance to love without fear.